Hi everyone, I'm going to wrap up my beginner's gardening tips talking about water. It's another beautiful morning in South Carolina. We have a front coming through, so it's a little bit colder than it has been recently, and it's quite windy, so you might hear that. So you've decided where to place your plants, and I hope you have them in the ground. You've done your plants based on where the sun is, and then you've worked a little bit with the soil. Either you've brought soil in by buying gardening soil or potting soil, or you've worked with what you have. They're in the ground. You've covered the soil with some sort of mulch, and at this point you're just waiting and seeing what happens. But you have to make sure that it gets water beyond what it gets with the rain, depending on where you live. In South Carolina, we definitely need to help our plants by watering them ourselves. So there's lots of different ways to do this. Every plant has a different need, so do a little bit of research depending on what vegetables you have. A Mediterranean herb like rosemary is going to need less water than a tomato, so definitely do your research on that to start with. Then find a time that makes sense for you. A lot of people like to water in the morning. It's a nice peaceful 10-15 minutes spending time with your plants. You'll get to see your vegetable babies grow. That's really nice and a peaceful thing to do. You can water with a hose if you like, or you can use a watering can depending on your hookup. Just make sure that your hose or your watering can has holes like this to imitate rain. You don't want to use just a straight open hose that has a big powerful stream. That's too much impact on the soil and the mulch. And you're gonna have to just play with it and see what happens. You can use drip hoses. This is really up to you to research depending on your setup. A lot of figuring out your hosing situations depends on where faucets are and how much hose you actually have. Another thing to keep in mind is if your plant is drooping and it looks like it's dehydrated, that's already too late. Don't use that as an indication. Similar to my coach tells me when we're on the bike that if you're waiting to drink until you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Well, if your plants are looking drooping from the heat or lack of water, they're already experiencing too much stress. That doesn't mean you ignore them. Definitely go out there and water them, but don't use that as an indicator as to whether you need to water or not. Play with it, see what works, do your research. Every plant is different. Beyond just your regular watering, something to keep in mind is how the water is actually working on your land. We have a water problem on our house, so I'm going to show you that. We don't have a solution yet, but I'm going to talk you through something to keep in mind and keep an eye out for. And I'm hoping you can see this in the video, but this is looking up from our front yard onto the road, and you can see that we're on a hill. And so our property is on the side of a hill, and then we have, boom, our house here. So no surprise, this area right here gets a lot of problems with water. And these beds in particular, this is where we have the most plant problems. We would love to use this area to grow something edible. We've worked with azaleas here, and the azaleas have died. So not only do we have pooling water here, we have an issue with water runoff from the roof because we don't have gutters on there. So anytime it rains, it pummels this soil right here. And this is what I think we need to do. Let me show you this. So this is where the water comes down very hard, and if I try and get in here, this is like actually impossible for me to dig into. So, oh my goodness, this is like way more so super compacted right here. So my thinking is the reason why we have so many problems with this bed is it gets too little water, and then it gets waterlogged, and then all of this soil here, this is nice soil, gets compacted, and the roots for these new plants here can't grow through the compacted soil, and they can't grow behind because we have a wall right here. So my idea is I would like to get gutters on the roof because this runoff is just not going to be improved at any point, and maybe store the water, and then we can water the front here. But that's something to keep in mind. This, like I said, is a very problem area for us. We just can't seem to get anything to stay alive here, and I'm pretty certain it's because we have this this soil compaction issue. And I know this looks like sand, but this was soil and now it's sand. Let's see if I can get down there. No, you can't even get in there. So how can my plants grow? How can the poor roots from that plant grow when I can't even get my finger in there? if you, for some reason, the plant that you've planted or the vegetable doesn't turn out the way you want or it dies, don't take it to heart. Don't just say you don't have a green thumb. Part of being a gardener is having those successes and failures. Don't think of it as a failure. There could be so many things that go wrong. It could be the soil isn't particularly right for that plant. It could be a very rainy season and it gets too much water. It could be incredibly dry and it doesn't get enough water. The plant just might not work in that spot. And gardening is learning those things and just accepting it. Death is part of the life cycle, and so what you can do if something dies is you return it to the earth, and that matter is going to feed your soil even more. So if something dies, do a chop and drop, chop the plant and then chop it up with the pruners and leave it in the soil. If you have a compost pile, it goes straight into the compost. That's more things, and that plant will eventually feed the plants to come. So please don't be discouraged. These are just some beginning tips that I know helped me understand as someone who really wasn't a gardener and going on this journey. And happy planting. I'm hoping for wonderful vegetables and fruit from everyone. And if you have more things you'd like me to talk about, I'm more than happy to share them with you. Reach out.